Hey everyone, ready to dive in. We're tackling a big one today. What is God?
Shankar Santhamurthy's take on this is quite fascinating. Lots to unpack.
Yeah, his YouTube video really goes deep, pulling from all these different traditions. I mean, we're talking philosophy, religion, even a bit of science. You ready for this?
Oh, absolutely. It's a real whirlwind, but in the best way possible.
So he starts off with this question, what is religion? And I gotta say, I thought we'd get like a simple definition, you know?
Right. Straight to the point.
Instead, he kind of throws us for a loop. We get these different perspectives, academic views, then Swami Vivekananda's idea of faith as this expression of inner divinity.
It's refreshing, isn't it? He really emphasizes that there's no single answer, no one way to define it.
Yeah, it's like he's saying religion is more about how we experience that something bigger than ourselves, how we understand our world, our place in it.
Precisely. And he takes it a step further with this 5-stage model of how religion has evolved. It all starts with early humans, right? Picture them looking up at the stars, the storms, feeling that awe of nature, that raw power.
It's humbling to think about it like that, our connection to the sacred, starting with something so simple, so fundamental.
Exactly. And as humans evolved, that connection, it began to take on different forms. He talks about symbolism, how we went from experiencing the divine in nature to trying to represent it. Think cave paintings, rituals, those early attempts to grasp at something bigger.
Trying to translate those feelings of awe into something tangible, something we could share and understand.
Exactly. And from those early expressions of faith, he says, we began to give the divine human-like forms, making it relatable. That's the anthropomorphism stage.
It's fascinating how those early impulses, that desire to connect, ultimately pave the way for the organized religions we see today.
It really makes you appreciate the scope of it all, doesn't it? This human need to understand, to connect with something beyond ourselves. It's universal.
Absolutely. And to really drive that point home, Santhamurthy even breaks down the global distribution of different faiths.
It's pretty eye-opening when you see it visualized like that, how belief systems are intertwined with history, with culture, across continents.
It's a lot to take in, that's for sure. But before we move on, he does introduce this other fascinating concept, this comparison he makes between fire, Agni, and then Vigrahas, the deities.
Ah, yes. That subtle but important distinction. It's like he's laying the groundwork for understanding these different approaches to worship.
Okay, so we've got humans searching for meaning, trying to connect with the divine. But how do these sacred texts, these sastras, as Santhamurthy calls them, fit into all of this?
Well, he dives right into this ocean of scriptures, Vedas, Agamas, Puranas. He throws a lot at us, honestly.
It's intimidating almost. Like, where do you even begin with all of that?
He actually does a good job of bringing it back to the basics. Like, why are these scriptures important in the first place? Think of them as guides, you know? Roadmaps left by the people who came before us.
Okay, that makes sense. A roadmap passed down through generations. So what's the first stop on our roadmap? What are the Vedas all about?
He starts with the Vedas. And, instead of just listing them out, he uses this really cool analogy. He compares the flow of wisdom from these texts to something we see every day, the water cycle.
I remember thinking, okay, where's he going with this when I first heard it? Evaporation, condensation, he's really breaking it down.
Right. But then he brings it all together. He's saying, just like water nourishes the earth, these teachings, they nourish us. Each generation receives that wisdom, embodies it, and then passes it on, just like the cycle of rain.
That is such a cool way to look at it. So it's not just about these ancient words, it's about keeping that wisdom alive, flowing.
And that's the thing with Santhamurthy, he always brings it back to that. But he does get into the specifics too, like with the Rig Veda, the oldest of the Vedas. It's filled with these hymns, these powerful expressions of praise and prayer.
So even back then, language, poetry, it was a way to connect with something bigger.
Absolutely. And then he touches on the Yajurveda, which is all about rituals, ceremonies,
Yeah.
outward expressions of faith,
It's like we're hardwired to find ways to express those feelings, whether it's through words or actions. But he also mentions the 6 schools of Hindu philosophy. That's where it gets really complex, right?
Yeah, it's like 6 different lenses, each one offering a unique perspective on the big questions. Who are we? What is reality? What's the point of it all?
6 different approaches, but ultimately they're all searching for the same thing, that connection to something greater.
Exactly. It's about finding your own path through those questions. But just when you think he's covered everything, he hits us with the Agamas. And this is where that earlier point about fire versus deities comes back into play.
So the Agamas, this other set of scriptures, they approach the divine a bit differently than the Vedas, right? Something about fire versus deities.
Yeah, it's a key distinction. The Vedas, they often use Agni, fire, as this symbol of purification, a way to connect with the divine. But the Agamas, they put more emphasis on vigrasas, those physical representations, the deities themselves.
Okay, so less about the abstract idea and more about having something tangible to focus on. But it's not just about idol worship, right? There's more to it than that.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
It's much deeper than that. Santhamurthy explains how the Agamas actually lay out a structured path for spiritual growth. It's got these 4 steps: Surya, Kriya, Yoga, and then Jnana. Like climbing a ladder, each step takes you higher.
I like that. Climbing a spiritual ladder. So take us through it. What's the first step?
So you start with Surya. This is all about discipline, mental purification, like laying the groundwork.
Getting your mind right.
Exactly. Then you move on to Kriya, which focuses on rituals, actions, devotion. And this is often directed towards those vigras, those deities.
So the physical act of worship becomes a way to connect on a deeper level.
Right. And as you progress, you reach the yoga path. This is where things become more internal. Meditation, breath work, practices designed to cultivate that inner connection.
It's cool how he ties together those outward expressions of devotion with this inner journey.
It's all connected, right?
Yeah.
And it all leads to jnana, the final step. This is the pursuit of knowledge, of wisdom, really diving into the philosophy at the heart of the agamas.
So it's about understanding the deeper meaning behind the rituals, the deities, everything.
Exactly. And, even with their differences, Santhamurthy emphasizes how both the Vedas and agamas, they ultimately point to the same thing, this interconnectedness of everything, different paths leading to that same spiritual understanding.
It's really about finding your own way. He gives us all this information, all these different perspectives, but he doesn't tell us what to think.
He leaves it open-ended. He wants us to keep asking questions, keep searching.
And that's what makes it so interesting, right? We've covered a lot of ground here, the nature of religion, how faith has evolved, these ancient scriptures. It's a lot to process.
It really is. But if you take one thing away from this, let it be that sense of wonder, that desire to keep exploring these ideas. It's a lifelong journey. And honestly, I think that's exactly what Santhamurthy would want us to do. Keep digging, keep questioning, keep that curiosity alive.